and I'll have us in the corner and all that fun stuff. But then I always got to make sure that like it doesn't play. That it's muted. It is, and let's go. Happy New Year, everyone! It is episode number 43 of Cheerful Conversations. I cannot wait till we get to 50, and then I'm like, I'm halfway done with the number of episodes I want to do. I decided that
party.
I want to be able to like do 100 episodes of these, and then we'll just retire and then move on to all the fun other stuff that we're doing. But it's going to be 100 episodes with 100 amazing people, or a little bit less than that. So today I wanted to introduce you to my awesome co-host, Valerie Friedlander. Hey, Valerie. We are going to talk about something super fun called stress.
So fun. Stress is so fun.
And stress management. This is going to be so funny. I have to tell them the backstory. Okay. So right before we hopped on, Valerie's neighbor is
downstairs.
They're downstairs, like doing some remodeling.
Bathroom remodel. It's a bathroom remodel. Yeah.
So for a lot of the time when we were prepping before the show, it was like coming out, and I was just like laughing because I could tell that Valerie was totally stressed, and we were like, okay, well, we'll see. I mean, this will probably be good if it happens. So it's going to be fun to see the reactions of what happens here. But
see what Valerie does.
It's like, what would Valerie do under stress? But we're going to talk about more we titled this and themed this stress management. And, I don't know, I tried to think of something like snazzy and fun, but there's not really, I mean, it's like, just cut to it, right? Because stress is stress, and it really is, how do we manage it? How do we deal with it? There's different tactics that are out there, but we're just going to talk about what we can do with stress and why it's there and whatever about stress. And so during this conversation, we're going to really dig into some of the ways that we can leverage stress to our benefit. We can talk about, different things that happen when we let stress get the best of us, and other ways to, and we might even have some live examples of how to handle stress in the moment. So, but before we get started, I always love to spend some time introducing you all to these awesome co-hosts that I have. Some of them are friends of mine. Some of them are people I'm meeting for the first time. And I really think it's important for you to really get to know the people that I bring on the show and co-host with me, because they're amazing. And it's just more than whatever it is that they do for work, or, who they know or whatever. But it's really great for me to showcase who they are and how amazing they are. And it's just fun. It's fun for me to hear all the stuff that I might already know, maybe, or not. So, Valerie, while I'm getting my notes up, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you and what you do and who you are?
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for welcoming me and inviting me to come on here. So I am a certified life leadership coach, and April and I trained together. So that's how we met. And let's see, I'm a mom of two rambunctious little boys. So we also have that in common.
Yes.
The boy mom life, and a wife, and creative. I love all things creative. So I'm constantly dabbling in creative outlets. I love sewing. That's been like a passion of mine for many years, but it takes a lot of time. So with both raising a business and raising children, that is something that doesn't happen as often. So I recently found a love of face painting and started a little side hustle painting faces, which is a lot of fun. It's a great complement to like the more process, like longer term process oriented nature of coaching, to like the instant gratification sense of accomplishment that I get when I'm painting faces. So that's a fun thing. And then I'm also a giant nerd. So like any sci-fi, fantasy, comic book, like you name it. I love I love watching all of those things, but I also love like digging into like the sociological, psychological commentary that goes into a really good sci-fi movie or book or TV show or whatever. So my husband and I are recently finished watching the most recent episode of The Expanse, and that's a really cool one. So
that's awesome. So she answered all the questions that I normally go through, but it's great. So you geek out on sci-fi and face painting. We met at our training, coach training. What year was that? That was 2016. So was that?
It was 2015. We graduated 2016, the beginning of 2016. So
we met 4 years ago?
4 years ago.
Oh my God, that's so long.
I know.
It's crazy to think that that's just, this life. And it's just so funny too, because when we met, there are 3 different modules of our training, and we met in the 3rd module, which was at the very end of it. And so I had done my first 2 trainings in different locations. And so we actually had just met 4 years ago around this time. And I remember feeling very overwhelmed by like everybody's friends with each other. And I was, even though I might look very like outgoing, whatever, I feel like I was so shy. I don't even remember who it was, but I was like texting one of my friends from my previous mods and was like, who is this? Like, what am I supposed to do? I don't want to talk to anybody. And then somebody had come up and like introduced themselves, and I'm like, thank God, because I'm so scared in big crowds, especially when everybody like seems to know each other. Is that the noise?
That is the noise. That is the noise. I set a boundary. I was like, I need silence. So I'm putting my headphones in. This is one way I'm handling my stress. I've already taken it out on the floor.
She's like, boom, boom, boom.
Sometimes we can use that energy to express ourselves, but you have to be very mindful of how you use that. And then it's also finding solutions, such as putting my headphones in and seeing if that helps. Yes. So hopefully my audio quality does not diminish too much when I switch to
we'll let you know.
Microphone. Oh yeah, we'll see if that works.
So while she's setting that up, yeah. So we met, and I think you're probably the one that I keep the most in touch with from that mod, which is, it's just great to like watch how we've grown. And I know that even in the last couple of years, we haven't had a chance to connect, and we just went out for coffee. It was like a month ago or so. And so it was so good to be there. But I know that the last 2 years for me have just been super crazy. And so it's just so great to be back here and reconnecting, and it's a new year and there's just so much more. And just to see how much we've grown in 4 years is crazy.
Well, us, like watching the shifts and the changes in our business. Can you hear me okay, by the way? Okay. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, no, it sounds great.
So yeah, just seeing the different experiments that we've run in our business and finding ways that we like and ways that we don't like, and kind of exploring this different world than what we came from, which was a different sort of stress.
Yeah.
So actually that is one of the things that I think is going to be very interesting, is looking at the stress of our previous prior to coaching life to the stress in entrepreneurship, but as a coach. So it's like a different way of approaching it because of different tools, but also a different reality, really.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we will definitely talk about all of that. And I'm super excited to talk, and both of us have shifted so much since we met 4 years ago. And I think too, even when, we were both starting our businesses the first time together, and seeing how, there was a lot of like, okay, we don't know what we're doing. Let's get all the help that we can from every resource. And I feel more that we've now collected our own data, and we've been able to use that as a way to be like, okay, this is how I'm going to be moving forward. And I was just telling Valerie before we hopped on that I feel like this year is the year that I'm going to break all the rules, because I feel confident enough to do so. And I feel established enough that, I'm not going to do anything super crazy that's going to, you know, derail me completely, but, you know, just trying things and doing things that are against the grain of what I have been taught and feeling like would be the way that I could make my business successful. So I'm doing that not only in my business, but also in life. And it's scary and in a good stress kind of way, but it's going to happen. So we're 8 days in. So.
Well, and that's one of the things I've had come up a lot recently, and just in terms of like an analogy of like, you can't break the chains that you don't know you have. So exactly. The first part is understanding those chains, and then I say chains, but it's really the rules, like your playbook of rules that your brain subconsciously autopilots you into engaging, because that's how we internalize those rules from parents, from society, from all of the things. And a lot of times those cause stress, but it's subconscious stress that just, because we're playing by a playbook, we don't realize we didn't consciously choose that playbook. Yeah. We just kind of auto do it because that's the way brains work. Yeah. So it's a really different thing when you're experiencing stress because of, well, this is the way life is, versus I know these rules and I know that I can change them if I want to. And then the stress of consciously engaging that change, which, like you said, is that fear, but like the good stress, because you're in charge of it instead of it being in charge of you. Yeah. Which I would say, actually, as I say that, it's probably one of the core components of effectively using stress in your benefit versus having it use you.
Yes. So remember that when we recap at the end, because that's like we're seeding the core message.
I'm like Merlin, I live backwards. No. Hashtag nerd.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Okay, so the next thing that we do in the introductory piece is I have this game that I've been for 43 episodes now picking slowly questions from, and I only use them once, and I have 3 different categories. And Valerie, you're gonna pick your category that you'd like. So there's just break the ice, which is just a general but still thought-provoking question. Good, good introductory question. There's get vulnerable. It goes a little bit deeper. And then there's laugh a little, which might be funny, haha, and I might pull something that might be an action, like something that you have to do, which then I'll just pull another one. But
I was gonna say,
there's been times where there was one that I did in a previous episode. It was like, just start smiling at your person and see how they react. And so like I didn't say anything, and they're like, did I? Are you frozen? Like, it was just so funny. Or maybe that didn't even happen and I'm making it up in my mind now, but I did. That was the question. And I was like, I don't think let's do another one. So, okay. What topic would you like? Or category?
I'm going to say, let's get vulnerable.
Okay.
I think vulnerable. I'm all like, I love Brene Brown. I'm going to say her name right.
Ooh. Okay. I like this one. And I'll see if I can get it to focus. Give me a second. What would you like to be acknowledged for that you haven't been? There we go.
Ooh.
And we'll both answer the question.
You can go first. No.
Like, let me think about
I mean,
I think that the way that I want to answer this is that I feel like I have to self-acknowledge a lot, because I acknowledge that this is a like the core of who I am, which is, this is like the Jill of all trades, the polymath, the person who can like do anything or everything, but is like an expert of none. And I think I would like to be acknowledged for the fact that I think that the reason that I justify myself so much in that is that because I'm not an expert at anything per se, I feel like, I think subconsciously, I feel like that's a failure on my part. And I feel like there's like a negative, like I keep on trying to shift it to like, hey, I'm good at everything, but not at just one thing. And I'm trying to almost justify that makes me legitimate. But I feel like the fact that I can just decide any day that I want to do something and that I have the drive and ambition to do it. I think people do acknowledge me for the drive and ambition, but I think it's the being acknowledged for the fact that like being an like expert at nothing but like really darn good at a lot of things like is a huge gift, because I can basically take whatever it is that I'm doing, apply whatever thought process is that cause me to take action and get it done. But like, I don't know if people generally see that as a gift. And so I'd like to be acknowledged more for that. And I'd like to acknowledge more people who also feel that way. So I'm like, all you people who feel like you're just like this multi-passionate and have all these different strengths, but like don't know where to channel all that energy or how to describe yourself, like please come find me, because I want to connect more of those people. So I think that's what mine would be.
Yeah.
I think very, very on a snap.
Yeah. So I resonate a lot with that answer. That the question itself gives me some pause in terms of thinking about like both what are my goals, you know, like what do I want to be acknowledged for that I haven't been, and not necessarily because I've earned that yet, but because it's something that I want to achieve. As well as like, what are the things that I have already done that I would like other people to see? And what does acknowledgement look like? all the questions. So that
question
that provokes a lot of interesting questions for me. So I would say something that I really would love is, in terms of growth, to be seen as someone who makes an impact. And I think I've seen that, and I've been acknowledged for that on smaller scales, but I think one of the things that I would love to achieve, and I don't know that I have achieved that yet, right? Like I plan on, you've inspired me in a lot of ways. And in terms of writing a book, I would love to write a book. I've got a lot of ideas in my head. So getting to that point where I've written a book where it's considered inspirational, or, you know, it's considered not even just impactful, right?
Yeah,
an impactful book. And to share and to speak more. But in some ways, I also think about like, that's that motivation, like my motivation to make an impact. And I tend to work with women who want to make an impact. And I think what I want to be acknowledged for, really, that's a piece of it that I have power over, in a very direct sense. In the long term, like I think acknowledgement that I haven't been yet is the impact of supporting the impact of others.
Yeah.
All right. That ripple effect of helping women step into that impact and shift the dynamics in our society. I'm very social justice, economic justice, environmental justice, justice oriented. And so a big motivator for me is supporting other women owning their superpowers, releasing the toxicity that our current society has created from that, and shifting that dynamic, so that we embrace female superpowers as well as more masculine superpowers, in a way that's healthy. And I would love sometime down the line, after I've worked with many, many more people, that the ripple effect from that work gets to be seen, if not connected by other people, at least by myself, so that I can look back on my life and go, I did what I was here to do.
Yeah. I love that. And when I keep on thinking about this question now, you know, you went deep, like, and very analytical in terms of like, how should I respond to this question? I'm like, I just need to think of something super fast because I don't want people standing here like listening to me think. But you know, it is really interesting because when I think about acknowledgement, when I read that, I think that there was also this trigger where, you know, I've spent most of my life like wanting to be acknowledged for whatever it is that I'm doing. And I was like, I've grown so much to the point where I'm like, I don't really care what people think about me anymore. And that's really bold for me to say now, because, yes, I still do care about what other people think, but I have more and more over the course of the past 5 years been really owning whatever it is that I do and not feeling like I have to justify, and therefore not really caring about the acknowledgement, because as long as the acknowledgement is within, here's where I get a little bit woo woo about it. But, that's really what matters. And so, I'm thinking about this, but at the same time, I'm like, a lot of times people don't really even know how to describe me because I'm all over the place. So I'm like, can't people just know that that's just part of my personality? And I think people get it, and maybe people are acknowledging it, and I'm just, assuming that they don't see it, but I just don't talk about it a lot.
That's an interesting thought. So like in terms of, so one of the skills that we learn in training is acknowledgement and validation, right?
Yeah.
Like it's acknowledging someone's experience that you don't necessarily have to resonate with, but you are seeing it. And that's one of the underlying things that most of us want in life, is to feel seen and heard.
Yeah.
And actually we were, there's a game, Say Anything. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's like you pull a card and you say it and everybody writes their answer for you. Like, so the question that we played it with my family over Christmas, and the question that my mom said, it was like, what creates happiness, or something like that. And people wrote down a variety of things. And the answer that was written, my sister wrote, it was the one my mom chose, which was being heard. And I think acknowledgement really is that experience of being seen and heard.
Yeah.
And ultimately that has to come internally. You can't actually perceive that from other people unless you're giving yourself the space to see and hear yourself. But it helps to have that brought into your life.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I think
it's always nice when people are like, you're doing awesome. Yeah. And I mean, and I feel like sometimes that's why, like, a lot of people that I work with, it's like they just want to know that even though that they like brush their teeth every night on, as a goal, and they accomplished it in any given week, like other people would be like, okay, this isn't really a brag, but like I was really trying to brush my teeth in the evening a little bit more, and then I did it. And for somebody like me to be like, that's amazing! Like, I struggle brushing my teeth too, and just doing that acknowledgement and validation, like, people love it. And so it's just also like feeling like you belong, right? I think we had this conversation in another episode, but just really feeling like you belong, and that's where the acknowledgement comes in. And so maybe going back to my answer to the question is that, like, it makes me feel like I don't belong when I'm not super good at one thing, and I keep on kind of like going through different waves of different things. So that was a good question. Nice and thought-provoking. All right, let's talk about stress. Oh wait, we have to do one more thing. Okay. Cheerful news. This is the little segment where we me and my co-host both bring a separate story. It could be something from our lives and something that we're experiencing, or something that we find on the news, and just share it to just push more positive vibes out in the world. So since I went first for the question, Valerie, you go first with whatever news you found that was positive out in the universe.
So I was thinking a lot about this because I do listen to the news, and there's a lot of unpleasant news out there. And I love, and I'm just going to paraphrase the quote by Fred Rogers that was like, look for the helpers.
Yeah.
Whenever there's sadness. So I was trying to do that because that helps me feel like that you can do something. Like it's less overwhelming and stressful. So one of the things that I've seen, I also love animals. So one of the things that I've seen several news stories around is with the fires in Australia, how people are rescuing koalas. And I saw an article recently about these teens who like welcome these koalas into their car, like and rescue them from the fires. And a woman who like took her shirt off and like wrapped a poor, koala up in her shirt and carried it away from the flames. And just people like putting themselves out there in ways to help and heal. And so that's a gem, a uplifting thing in a really sad situation. So.
Yeah. That's, like koala was, but like
I love koalas. Oh, and I do on a lighter note of that, my sister-in-law loves koalas, and as I mentioned, I like to sew. She also gets cold like I do, so for Christmas I made her like it's not like a onesie, but like more like a big dress out of alpine fleece with a pocket instead of two pockets on the sides. It's just one pocket in the front, like a pouch, because they're marsupials. And then I made a hat that looks like a koala, and it's really amazing. I have to say, it's like the best. And so when she opened it, she was just like, so she gets to be a koala when she's cold.
I love it. That's awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay, so my story, and I'm starting to get a little less creative and looking for my stories. So I don't know, I'm feeling inspired for like my next one to do something different with the positive news story that I share when I find it. But this time I was looking, and I am like such a sucker for viral videos, whether they're funny or like epic fails or whatever. I don't know why, because it's just the viral videos that are, either took a lot of thought and are very, very well done, or just totally off the spot, like something that you wouldn't realize. But there was this guy who, and I'll preface this by saying that, like, I feel like customer service is like the hardest job, and it doesn't pay enough, but like it can make such an impact if you do it right. And so there's this video of this guy who's like I think it was North Carolina or whatever state, but he works at Chick-fil-A, and they have that drive-through, and he stands outside and takes orders for people and kind of like helps expedite the line, which, some restaurants do. I know that Portillo's here in Chicago does that, like, especially when it gets busy, but just to, and it's just super, super nice, super friendly. But he was so like over the top, like trying to memorize people's names. And this is like a busy place that has like people driving through like nonstop, and he's trying to remember people's names, and just even saying nice things like "have a wonderful day," or asking them, I really like that sweater, or anything like that, to really just know. Again, this is like having this person being acknowledged for just being there, not just like, "Can I take your order?" And so, even though this isn't like life-shattering, life-changing stuff, like if we were to all have that mentality in how we interact with people, whether or not if where we're shopping, or how we're interacting, or with our friends, or with complete strangers in the mall, or whatever that is, like how much happier would this world be? And so I always find these glimpses of like people just going out of their way to be overly nice. And to that, I just say, these are the people who are going to help shift our culture. We've got a lot to combat with all the stress that comes with the weight of things that people carry with them, and how they let out that energy. But even somebody doing something just a little bit, and just being super nice, and making a customer service job like seem way more fun than it might be sometimes, especially with the way that sometimes people just they just know to come to a customer service call, and they're like, I'm going to complain so I can get what I want. But to do it from a more positive perspective, and understand that the person on the other line is a human being who is really just trying to help, and the negative energy exchange is not going to make things any better. So that was my positive story for the day. But I think if you look for a Chick-fil-A viral video, you'd find it on the web. So.
Yeah. Well, and that actually can be a great stress reliever.
Yeah.
Like smiling and being nice to other people, even when you don't feel like it.
Yeah.
That's actually a practice that when I'm jogging, so I'll jog in the morning, and on my way back, so I jog to the lake, and then jog back, and I'll see people because everybody's walking to work and stuff, and I'll just say good morning, like, hi. I'll just be friendly to people.
It makes such a difference.
And it does. I mean, even if they don't, like, oftentimes I'll hear "good morning" like behind me because I've passed them already, like, and it took them a second. But that, even if I'm not feeling very upbeat that day, smiling at other people and saying hello, I always feel better. Like,
Yeah.
I always feel like a bubbliness that happens where I'm much more motivated to do the things that I need to do that day. So yeah. that is a great, great stress reliever, great segue into
Great segue into talking about stress. Have they been banging anymore?
Not yet.
Okay, not since you put the headphones.
Not since I put the headphones in. Yeah. I heard like a little like, and then I feel like they went, "Oh, we're not supposed to do that." I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I like to think that maybe.
Yeah. That's so funny. All right, so let's kind of start to digest all the things that we wanted to talk about, but I wanted to maybe even start by going back. I know that you mentioned this at the beginning, like to almost kind of see what the stress of, who we were 5 years ago versus who we are now, or even maybe we could even go earlier, but just maybe sharing our personal journeys with stress, because I think everybody handles it differently. And I know that through part of our coaching program, we learned a lot about the stress reaction. And I think one of the biggest realizations that I had coming out of the coach training program was that, if you look at your stress differently, or if you were able to just have a different perspective on what you were doing, that was going to be the source of so many things. You would be happier, you would be more productive. And that's a huge, important thing to me, right? Like the less time I spend talking, thinking about stress, talking about stress, being stressed, I actually can do more. And so maybe I'll just start since I'm talking already. But I know that, when we were talking about this topic initially, I was thinking about, this one day, and maybe it was like 2010 or 2011, I was like 3 months pregnant in my first trimester. I'm, or no, and I'm finishing the whole breastfeeding with my first and trying to make that transition. Or maybe that was just before. I don't know. Anyways, it's all blends in my mind. It all blends together. But I just remember there's these days that I would go to work and I would drive my son. So I was not pregnant. I would drive my son to my mom's house, but I was breastfeeding, and I would get to my parents' house, which is about 30 minutes away. And then my work would be 15 minutes away from my parents' house. And I'd get to my mom's house and I would realize that I left my breast milk on the counter, and I had to drive all the way back to my house, or my kid wouldn't be able to drink milk, and I was just so stressed out. And then I would get to work at 10:30 and I'm feeling like this big failure, and I was so tired. And I know anybody who's a parent knows that that first year of life with your baby is exhausting. There's no way to go around it, but I felt defeated all the time. And then, when I got home, I was I need to make up for, the fact that I showed up so late to work. So I'm going to work even more into the night. And so I felt like I was constantly working, and it was so stressful. And, clearly for those of you who have been following me for a long time, my stress manifested into an autoimmune disease that I have to manage, which I have managed very well for the last 2 years straight. Thank you very much. But it took me a whole 3 years to stabilize. And it was just not, it was a big learning lesson for me that stress management had to become a huge conversation in my life moving forward, because I don't want to lose my hair and just feel like I'm falling apart, or have other things surface in my health. Health had to be, a very big priority. So what about you, Val?
So for me, it was kind of this sneaky thing. So I had done a lot of work essentially around stress management, because a lot of my stress came into trying to control other people, places, and things that aren't mine to control. So really doing the self-work to realize that the only person I could control was myself. Mm-hmm. And I did a lot of work to essentially manage. So I was managing that really well overall. But then And actually this ties into acknowledgement.
Yeah.
From that place, I built a life that I thought was the life that I was supposed to be happy. So like, if you do the things, then you get the reward of happiness.
Yeah.
That wasn't like a conscious process, but it was like, follow the rules and you win the game. Like we played the game of life, my parents somehow acquired. And I'm like, this is a horrible game. It's a horrible game. Like,
Yeah.
you have to get married, you have to buy a house. And I did all those things though. Like I went to college, I got married, I developed a lucrative corporate career, I bought a house in the suburbs, and then I tried to have kids. And that was the first place where stress really started showing up. My system was under stress and I was having trouble getting pregnant. And I didn't know what was going on. Like, I went to an endocrinologist, I did all these things to like try and figure out why can't I get pregnant? What's going on? Is it stress? And the doctor that I was seeing was like, that's only if like you have an intense stress. I'm like, I feel like that's wrong. And I did some research of my own and discovered, well, actually cortisol levels can create havoc, like break cells down, which does not exactly create a hospitable environment for growing something, right? So like break the energy, and this is something we dig into in our training, was like, growing energy is different than breaking down energy, and that manifests in all the different ways. So I was existing in a lot of breaking down energy. Even though I was like managing life, it was still managing it, not enjoying it, not thriving in it. It was like, it's like, you know, having to constantly go to the store to buy more sugar for the cupboard, right? Like I'm constantly pouring sugar on the lemons that life would hand me. Oh, I've got sugar, you know, and I run out and then I have to run to the store and then I get more sugar and I keep pouring the sugar, instead of like learning new ways to use lemons, or, you know, like there's so many different ways of looking at it, but I didn't have any of those tools. I didn't know any of that stuff. So I was slowly breaking down. I was able, through a nutritionist, I worked on some of the ways that stress would, like what I was eating was influencing the way my body was under stress. But then once I had kids, I was like, no, just no. The amount of things that I couldn't control, but wanted to control, like I did not have enough sugar in the cabinet to make it okay. And I also was really confused as to why I was struggling so much, because I was like, I did all the right things. I followed the rules. I did the stuff. And why do I feel like my life is falling apart? And part of it, the main thing that I identified was like, I was working in a corporate job that wanted me to work multiple hours more than I had. And that wasn't really acknowledging the value that I was bringing. I didn't feel acknowledged for the value, both in compensation and also just in having the ideas that I bring to the table being embraced. I would basically be told, fix this problem. I'd be like, here's a solution. And they're like, no, just fix the problem. And I'm like, I can't fix the problem until we find a solution. And they're like, I don't care, fix the problem. So, so that actually was my thing. The thing that brought me to coaching initially was trying to find something that fit my life better, realizing that I had to change the rules that I was living by, and I had to do something different because what I was doing was tearing my life apart in the things that I actually cared about. Not just my health, but my marriage, my experience of motherhood, like everything. I felt like crap all the time. And honestly, like, I don't think anybody goes into things and goes, I want to feel like crap. I want to work. That's my, you know, maybe I want to feel purposeful. I want to feel useful. I want to feel impactful, but not like I want to work. Nobody
wants to work. Everybody wants to work less.
I mean, so yeah, that was kind of my experience with, with that. But, you know, it was interesting because even before I left that corporate job, understanding what was going on with the way I was experiencing the job and what my stress response was influencing in that experience, helped me handle it better and feel less depleted by the interactions that created. So essentially, like what you said earlier about, I was able to start valuing myself and acknowledging my own value, regardless of what other people were saying, and showing up from a place of value, self-value, versus showing up from a place of trying to convince you of my value.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's super important, because I think a lot of times when we think about the source of stress, right? I can totally relate with like being, and maybe it's just like a mom thing, or I don't know, but just this need to want everything in its place, right? Because when we know when everything is in its place and we are in control, like things just hum, they just move. But when you become a parent, all of that goes out the window. And so it's like, especially for new moms, it's like okay, let's just dig into all the places that you're uncomfortable, because you can't plan anything anymore. And it almost makes that whole, all the people who are like, I just want to wing it and I just want to go with the flow. Like, it makes that lifestyle seem so much more endearing and interesting. And like, I want to adopt that lifestyle right now. But we're so hardwired to be like, nope, we need the structure.
I need rules. I want a structure. I want a container to operate from, so that I can understand what I'm doing and do the right thing.
Yeah.
Is a big source of stress.
Yeah. But I think too, I think as part of it, I think a lot of times when we're stressed out, we think about like, okay, we want to be doing the right things, but like, who's to say what is the right thing? Especially when, you use, the example of dieting and like all the different things, that the different ways that you can eat. You can be vegan, you can be gluten-free, you can be keto, you can just not have a diet at all. You can, low carb, no carb, vegetarian. Like, there's just so many, like, what is the right way? And, it all comes back to you, right? What is the right way?
There is no right way.
And I think sometimes when we are so influenced by the people that are around us and the just where we are geographically, when we take all those things into account, we latch on to whatever belief system or whatever rules exist, because we don't want to do the work. we don't want to work. Exactly what we were saying before. We don't want to do the work to try to figure it out. We just follow those rules until they don't work anymore. But that's kind of where the stress comes, when it's like you're following a certain subset of rules, whether they're just how to live, or, what people say you should do or whatnot. And then feeling like either you want to do something different, but you've got the fear of, changing your ways. And that's why, like, change causes a lot of stress. Mm-hmm. Or there's the times when people are, you're either afraid. I lost my train of thought. I do this all the time. Or there's other times when people are looking to, they are doing the things that they, are like know in their mind, they're following the rules, but then they're like, but it's not working. And then they're like, oh man, I have to go through that journey of like trying to problem solve it a different way, because clearly like what everybody else is saying, or the way that the right way is not the right way for me. And so, it's funny because when we, stress shows up differently for people, right? Like for one person, like the noise and background of like your neighbor doing remodels, like, it could be like to somebody else, like, who cares, whatever. I'm half deaf anyways, I can't hear it. There's so many different perspectives depending on like where you are and what you've grown up with. And so like stress is all very like dependent on the person that is experiencing it, which is again things that we learned and were reiterated in our coach training. Mm-hmm. But it's not about, we all talk about stress and we think about it as a bad thing, but it doesn't always need to be a bad thing, right? We're not in the game, or we don't want to be in the game of trying to eliminate stress outright, because that's impossible. Like
we wouldn't grow.
you wouldn't grow, and if a lion was chasing you, you would die. So, right?
There's that.
It's like, let me go. We're like, because you know we live in Africa and the lions are everywhere.
Yeah, there's my kids have a book. I grew up with it too. It was a Maurice Sendak book that was Pierre, I think is that what it's called. And it's like Pierre says, I don't care. And they're like trying to get him to care. And he's like, I don't care. And this lion comes over and is like, after the parents leave, because he's like, I don't care if you leave. And the lion comes over and is like, well, I'll eat you if I may. And Pierre's like, I don't care. And then the lion eats him.
And then the book is just done.
No. I mean, then it goes on, like the lion, the parents come home and they're like, where's Pierre? And they'll say something to the lion goes, I don't care. And they're like, Pierre's in there.
Oh,
and after they take him to the doctor and they get Pierre out and everybody's like,
he's still
I care, you know, like suddenly caring. Anyway.
That's why I was like, where's the story going as a children's book?
Well, I think it goes to like the idea of caring. And oftentimes when you do care, there's stress involved. And I look at like nature for things to grow, for things to change, and develop and evolve, you need stress. Like there's a certain amount of stress that's necessary between cells to create a baby. Yeah. So, like stress is necessary. It's just, it's the length of time that you are experiencing stress can create tearing versus expanding, right? Like, stretching your comfort zone. So I use stress as information. It's like emotions. It's information. If we label stress as bad, then we end up fighting ourselves. And that's what I see a lot of times is like people beating, and I get on a bit of a soapbox around like the power of positivity, because people are like, I don't want to be negative. I can't be, I can't be stressed because that's bad. And it's like, no, it's not bad. It's information that you are hitting against something that needs to move. And maybe it's about usually it's about you doing something different to get a different result. So like when, with the work that I was in, I mean, I could keep tolerating not being valued as far as like what I wanted to bring to the table. And maybe what I wanted to bring to the table wasn't what they wanted brought to the table. Yeah. And it's not okay. So I could say that's bad. I could blame them. I could make them the bad guys. Because obviously I'm right, because I know so many things and, all that stuff. Like I could do that. And I could look for all the validation from all the other people to tell me that I'm right. I could fight it. I could do all these things. Or I could go, you know what? It's not a good fit. There's a misalignment here. And choose then, instead of trying to get them to do something different, look at what the dynamic is and say, all right, it's time to move on. But it's harder to look at our own stuff and make those shifts ourselves than to point at other people and make them wrong or make them, but that's giving our power away, which keeps us in stress. Yeah. So for me, it's always been looking at what's creating the stress. What's the belief that I have about this? How true is it? I feel usually stress is like, I feel under attack. I feel like life's happening to me, or I feel like people are doing things to me. And my typical response is to retreat and hide, but other people's are to like fight back. Yeah. If I take it out of that, like this is good or bad, and go, okay, this is information, or I'm feeling overwhelmed because I have a deadline that I've set for myself because I'm an entrepreneur and I do that. And I could just avoid it and then push it back because I can do that. Yeah. But then I don't accomplish things. Or I can go, okay, I'm going to feel stressed. How do I want to use that energy to help me accomplish things? At what point is that stress holding me back? And how much stress will help me grow? So that actually comes up a lot of times with clients people who want to hire me, but money is a factor. Yeah. And some people are willing to put it on a card.
There's stress all around money everywhere, right?
Some people are willing to put it on a credit card because they know they feel comfortable and confident in their ability to take action and recoup that money back because of the shifts that they're going to make and thus be able to do things more. So some people are able to do that. other people, the idea of having debt will activate a stress response where they shut down and they won't be able to get that money back. And you have to know what that limit is for you, because I say, like, if it's going to put you into, if it's going to go past your helpful stress level to put money in that you don't have, then you shouldn't do that. Like, I don't like to shit on people, but like, don't, if your stress isn't going to motivate you, it's going to freeze you, then it's not going to be productive.
Yeah.
And, find a way to make it so that you can mitigate that stress before you make that investment. And whether that's with me or with somebody else, like that's generally like at what level, understanding your stress response and how to make it work for you.
Yeah.
So that you don't stop. And because overwhelm and avoidance, naturally leads to avoidance, and then, you don't take action. And that's a stress that's just going to shut you down.
Yeah. And then you're just back where you started all over again.
And you're not going to make the change. So finding a way to harness stress where you're not labeling it as bad and going, this is, how do I want to use this energy?
Yeah.
Or what would help me release this energy if it's not going to be helpful?
Yeah. That's always a good tactic too. I mean, and I think too, when something gets too stressed, and I'll just use an example, if I'm, working on something and I'm hitting against a deadline and it's just not working, there's two things I could do. One, I can change my deadline. And, this is a little bit easier for me because I run my own business and I'm like, okay, I set that deadline, but it's not, it's causing me more stress than than makes sense anymore. So, what do I choose? Or do I, take a 5-minute break from it and then come right back and like try to slam dunk this and get it done? Or do I make changes? I love how you were talking about the fact that, stress is information, right? Like I was just thinking, data points. These are data points. This gives you the awareness that something doesn't feel right, or that something maybe needs to change. And you said something needs to move. But sometimes maybe it doesn't. But it's going to, like, that response that you have when you feel it is an invitation to just ask, like, what is this? What the F is this? What is this that I'm feeling? I spent a lot of the past year just watching for triggers. Like, oh, that I really hated it when this person like connected with me on LinkedIn and all they wanted to do was tell me about their business. And if I was looking for, because that was a huge stressor for me. I'm like, you're going to connect with me just so that you can sell your stuff to me. But, I would sit there and I'd talk about it, either with myself or with my coach. And I'm like, this is interesting that, like, I know that it's not the way that I like to do things. I like to connect first. But I also feel like there's a little bit of that, I was going to say aggression, but it's not like aggression. It's like more the assertiveness of it is something that I'm lacking. So it does give you information to explore, what is it that you feel that you could change? And what is it that you know that you don't want to be. Like, I feel like those are the two big places where stress can like give you that information to like make the decision, right? That you need to make. And, life is all a bunch of decisions anyways. And so, when you're feeling stressed, when you're making a decision, like, it's so good to kind of explore, like, why am I so stressed about putting my credit card down on this thing? Like, is it because it's really not something that I need right now? Or is it because like I'm strapped for cash and I'm not, or because of a bad purchase that I made not too long ago? Like, where is the source? But it gives you that information and that fuel to then do something about it, right? So I totally agree with this idea that stress needs to be something that you use as a tool to benefit you in, steering you towards what you want in a more productive way. And, eliminating stress and, or, I don't know, what other things do people say when they're trying to deal with stress?
Mitigating it,
reducing it, like,
transforming
it, pushing it, tangling it up, like whatever it is, like stress is going to
harnessing it.
Yeah. Stress. It's
well, that's one thing that you'll see a lot when people like, I'm angry, so I'm going to angry clean my house. That's a great use of stress. Super productive. Yeah. When I am angry, if I clean my house, my house gets clean.
Yeah. I tend to yell sometimes. I'll be like, why do I have to do this every time? And it's not that happy. It's very like forceful and angry. And then I like have to rewind and be like, okay, I don't really want to be yelling because A, that ruins my vocal cords, and B, like I just don't like it. But
well, nobody else wants to be in the house. Like, everybody leave. I'm gonna angry.
Yeah. I wanted to, and it's like already 1:56. Like that is just, everything always goes so fast when we're on the show. But like, if you were to, do you have like a go-to tactic? In terms of like, you experience stress, you know something's happening, like what is your tactic to help you manage your stress?
So there are a couple of things, actually. This fits really nicely with what you were just saying, in terms of getting curious about it, because when you're in stress, you tend to put blinders on, and it's like you're standing in front of a wall. You can't tell how big the wall is.
Yeah.
You only know that you're in front of a wall. So your only option are to turn around or to bust through the wall. And it's like, actually, if you take a step back and ask yourself some questions about this wall, you might see that the wall is not nearly as big as you thought it was.
It's an invisible wall.
Yeah, you can walk around it. You can climb over it, like whatever. Or you could bust through it. I mean, maybe that's what's necessary. Maybe it is a big wall. But, asking questions, getting curious, like giving, like, the fight or flight mode feels like there aren't any options, and it's either this or this. It's like my way or the highway. I'm either right or I'm wrong, like whatever. And that's rarely ever true. So when I can remember that is a construct and it's probably not true, then I can give myself the space to step back and kind of explore it and like, what is this about? What is this bringing up for me? What am I believing about myself because of this interaction, whatever. And then the other thing that you mentioned as well, in terms of like, connecting with your coach, there's a great TED talk by McGonigal is her last name, and I can't remember her first name.
Is it Jane McGonigal?
Might be, I don't remember. But she talks about stress and stress not actually being bad. Because what it does, the hormones that get released when we experience a potential threat are adrenaline and cortisol, but also oxytocin. Oxytocin it tells us to connect. Yeah. And one of the reasons why stress is so rampant in our society is that we don't have enough like connections to people. We feel that disconnect. And we're taught that we need to step back or like turn inward and like not share that we're stressed because stress is bad. Something is wrong if you're in stress. And that was the biggest thing for me in that story that I told about my experience with stress, of like, what's wrong with me that might feel like my life is a mess. I was like, well, nothing's wrong with me. It's just that what I built doesn't fit anymore. Yeah. So being able to connect with somebody else and talk with them, or just feel like I'm not alone, be acknowledged.
Keeps on coming back.
Those are great.
This is crazy that these questions like always like seem to really relate and help shape.
Maybe we're just good at like tying things together.
Yeah, maybe
we could acknowledge ourselves for that.
Yes. That we're really good at like tying back to overarching themes.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Those are the things that I do, are connect with somebody else, help somebody. Like if I can't engage that from a curious, that wall or that situation from a curious standpoint instead of the judgmental standpoint, then connecting with somebody else, supporting, releasing the emotions around it, and having that connection help me see a bigger picture so I can choose more consciously. Because if I can use that stress consciously, I can be super productive and make things happen. But when it's just, I feel like it's happening to me, and then I have no power, and it exacerbates my experience of the stress.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think if there's, I'm trying to like remember, like, what was the thing that we were saying? Like, you got to remember this line at the very end of of our talk, because I can't remember it now because you said it, and I mean, I wouldn't remember it if I said it either. But I think that there's this idea that, you know, if you've got stress, look at everything that's around it. Look at the filters. Look at what, think about what somebody else, like how they might have a perspective around it. Because it's a tool. It definitely is something that we can use to our benefit. And I think what I also wanted to say was that, like, there are gonna be days where we're gonna lose it and like wreak havoc and just let stress get the best of us. And I think that that's completely normal and natural there. I'm acknowledging that that's okay. But then also remembering that that's, if you have a reaction to your own reaction to stress, then there's an opportunity there to say, I don't know if I really like the way that I reacted to that. How could I do things differently in the future or the next time that this happens?
And what will help me remember that next time it happens? That's a big one. Oftentimes when you're making changes, you're not gonna stay with it. Like this ties into the resolutions too. Like you're not gonna stay with that change consistently initially because you're still rewiring your brain. Like rewiring your brain it takes thought, but it also takes action. Because otherwise, like when you take in the information, the synapses are still connecting the way the way they've learned to connect. And if they're going straight to your limbic system, which is your survival brain, it's going to naturally release the hormones without you thinking about it. Your frontal cortex is not involved. It's going to release the hormones that are designed to protect you, whether or not it's real. So knowing that's a normal thing to happen, there's nothing wrong that happened. And even if you took action that you look back on and go, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, which sure happens with kids all the time. But if I can be like, oh, I know that my kids are going to are going to interrupt me cooking dinner, and I reacted like this and I didn't like it, what do I want to do differently? Or what could I try instead of like, I have to have the right answer right away, but like, what could I try to support a different, like, what do I want to do instead? How do I want to experience this? How do I want to show up to this? And what will help me do that I could try and see if it works. And it might not, but like, once you find something, then staying consistent with it and doing it differently, even when that charge goes through, because it will, that action will slowly start to teach you something different so that you don't have as intense a trigger.
Yeah. And the stress will start to minimize, and then you won't feel it. And then you're going to be stressed about something else.
And then you'll get the next, well, that's what I love about parenthood. And people get stressed out of like, oh God, what's the teenage years going to be like? And I'm like, I have found that everything builds on itself. And I've seen this is true with our businesses, with business growth too. It's like you hit a level, it's stair steps. So you get to one level and you like, yes, I've got this one down. And then suddenly you're, in the next level of the life game. And you're like, oh, this is different.
No problems.
Now what do I do? But it builds on itself so that you can take what you learned, all the tools that you picked up. I'm like video game analogy now, like all the tools that you picked up are now suddenly going to be helpful in this next thing that and so on. And that's just,
Yeah. So if we had to summarize everything that we just talked about in 10 words or less, what would that be?
You're normal. It's okay. And
embrace stress.
Embrace stress. Use stress. Don't let stress use you.
Yes. I love that. Okay. So we kind of have to wrap up, unfortunately, which makes me so sad because I could literally talk for days on end, and especially with you. So, but thank you so much, Valerie, for being here and talking about stress with everyone who will see this either live now or in the future later. I like to close every one of my shows, and this is going to still be tied to the theme because I was able to find one, because stress comes up in a lot of the questions that people ask me. But somebody from my audience had asked, how is so like generic, but it's like, how do you keep from being overwhelmed? And I know that overwhelm is one of the biggest sources of stress for people that I work with. So what do you do to keep yourself from being overwhelmed?
Well, one, I don't. But I will add on that it's engaging that, like knowing that overwhelm is the way I'm experiencing something. So I feel like it's something is happening to me is usually, so like when I feel overwhelmed, I use that information to look for, what do I feel like I don't have control over? What do I feel like is too big for me to handle? And either how true is that, because it might not even be true, or what could I do to take one step into engaging it? So not like I'm going to eat the whole whale, but I'm going to take one bite of it.
Yeah.
Or what support do I need to be able to engage that?
Yeah.
So that's usually but my stress response typically is a sense of overwhelm. So I don't avoid it. Like it doesn't not happen, but it's less because I notice where it comes up and I can create stepping stones to engaging it differently.
Yeah.
So that it's not as, the overwhelm isn't as overwhelming.
Yeah. I love that.
And or is all consuming. We'll just say that is all consuming and controlling.
Yeah. And if I had to answer this question, I mean, I always think about like, it's really the practice of creating really like consistent habits and structure. And that can seem overwhelming to somebody who doesn't have a lot of structure, but it's not like, okay, I'm going to start like following this rule, creating that. But like I've gone through so many different like habits and structures, and then, they work for a little bit and then they don't work. Every 3 months, I like want to buy a new calendar or structure my calendar differently or structure my email differently, just because I'm finding something, I try something and then it doesn't work. And so I think it's this place of like being open to always problem solving, but problem solving like little by little structures in place. So like one of the things that I did this year, to create a structure, last year we wanted to like interact with more families and be more social. So we started doing a family game night, and we made it very habitual, like the third Saturday of every month. And we changed it if there was something that we had already planned that didn't mesh with it. But like we created that structure, and now we've got like people coming to our house on a monthly basis to play games with us, which is amazing. And we have all these board games, so we have that. But like this year I was like, there's too many pictures that my mom takes on vacations where like she's just taking random pictures, and it's like kid on iPad, parent on phone. And I was like, I just want to be able to say that we're not always on our electronics. So to combat that, because that kind of caused me stress. So I was like, let's just do like a no tech day. And it's not a full day, but it's, a few hours where we are intentionally setting this, the electronics away, tablets and phones, and just being with each other and going and doing something meaningful, like going to volunteer or going to try a new activity that, doesn't involve, phones and stuff, or, trying to do things that aren't like going to the arcade and play with more electronics, but like other things that we have not tried to do. And we did the first one this past weekend, and it was so fun. And so there's, really understanding these spaces of stress and like using some sort of creative solution to combat it, and just kind of seeing how it goes. And you're going to always have to tweak as you go, because things are going to change around you, and you're just going to have to roll with the punches. But being able to, not just like overhaul your life in a day, like think about the thing that's the most stressful to you and just do that. Clean that up and then move on to the next thing. Because the more of this overarching overwhelm that you have on your shoulders that you kind of like clear out of the way, you make more room for like less overwhelm.
That actually reminds me, that is one thing that we have started doing in the morning with the kids is reducing decisions. Like if you can reduce decisions in the more stressful time. So like our evening is less stressful than our morning.
So I would rather them choose what they're going to wear in the evening than in the morning.
I do that too.
Like that's, you know, so like anything that we can do to reduce decisions, they decide what they want for breakfast so that they can sleep a little bit later and I can make breakfast, you know, before, like, so there's no decision make, there's no waiting on, we all have our routine where we can just do the things without having to figure out what the other person is doing, what they want and what this is. We just know. And that has actually reduced a lot of the stress in the morning.
It's like prepping the night before is like huge. If you can just put yourself on autopilot the next day, it's amazing. So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, I hope that you guys who are watching had some amazing aha moments. And obviously, if you ever have any questions about stress or like just need a venting station that can help you kind of process and manage your stress better, you can reach out to either of us because we deal with it on a daily basis and we love talking about it too. So again, thanks, Val, for being on the show. It was so amazing to have you as my co-host today. And there will be more. So you guys who are watching, we'll see you on the next Cheerful Conversations in a couple weeks. Bye.